Alright, we have a laptop that was sent to us by a user that had it repaired by Precision Division. Just like all the other systems, when we open the box we can actually tell that the black electrical tape here and the aluminum shim right there is indicative of his work, so we know that this is a genuine repair by his people. So what we're going to do here is turn it on, see what happens. I'm pretty sure it's not going to work, but we'll just test it out to see. So we get the lights to turn on, and what we have right here is the actual caps lock light is blinking on and off, and that's going to be right here, on, off, on, off. So we know that that's indicative of a motherboard failure, chipset failure. So what we're going to have to do is take this apart, reflow it or reball it, and see what happens. Alright, what we have here is another perfect example of Precision Division work. We have the electrical tape and the aluminum shim on here, and if you actually look at it, it's quite thick. So what we're going to do is take this off like we always do, clean it up, and then we'll work on it. This will probably need a reflow to get it up and running. As a side note, today I actually wrote a blog that's on the website that actually explains why the use of aluminum, copper, pennies, and stuff such as that is not a good idea. I'll put the link in the actual completed video, but most likely this right here is not the greatest idea because it actually has a lower heat transfer, or what they call thermal conductivity, than what needs to be done, especially with the copper. But I'll put that in the actual video for the YouTube. But again, this is pretty common for Precision Division work. So now we've actually taken the fan off, and what we can notice on this fan, if we can actually get a close up, is there are white and gray, and the presence of the gray shows that there's actual, I'll point out right here, that there's actual Arctic silver, old Arctic silver, than the gray or the white ceramic compound that he has actually put. This system, for some reason, right here, has a wet appearance. It's wet all the way around here, and it's actually dried wet. So I don't know exactly what that is, but I had to take a look at it, probably clean it off. We're going to pull this shim off here, and we'll have to keep pulling and pulling and pulling until we get to the actual chipset. So there's our chipset, and what we're seeing here is that he takes the TIM, the thermal interface, which this isn't even proper thermal interface. This is silicon based with a latex backing, and that's not proper. But this right here is just aluminum foil that's been bought at Walmart or whatever, and it's actually been layered and layered and layered in there. And we have, 8-9 layers here. We've got layers that are stuck between with layers, and all these layers right here are taped together, and then you can actually see the ceramic compound that's on top there. So most likely what's happened is that overheated. Right there's it looks like moisture, but that's probably off of the actual thermal interface material that he has, because it feels a little bit wet. But with the latex backing on it, it's not actually transferring the heat properly. So yeah, another failure with it. I'm gonna have to see about getting something that actually works, and that right there is not what needs to be done. But what we're gonna do is we'll reflow this chipset, and we'll reflow this chipset. Now I get asked on a regular occasion, don't put shims on this, can we put shims on this? Yeah, you can actually put shims on top of this, because what happens is this doesn't have capacitors. That's actually got capacitors on it, and this right here does not have capacitors. So you can put a copper shim on that, or you can put aluminum shim, even though it's not transferring heat properly. It doesn't transfer enough heat to make it worthwhile, but you can do it, but it's not going to be the greatest. But you can put it on there. Now you'll have to, I would not tape it down, because this tape actually traps heat. The tape actually holds heat. You can probably use two-stage epoxy from Radio Shack, and that would work perfectly fine. But I would not tape it down. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this on the machine. We're going to reflow both of these, and then we're going to clean the old compound off of here, and the old compound off of here, and off of this, like it's supposed to be done. And then we're going to, put it back together and see what can be done. I'm going to have to look for a thermal interface, because this right here is just not going to cut it. And then we'll go from there. So earlier when I spoke and I said there was about 8 of them, I was actually wrong. There's excluding this one, there's actually 28 separate parts. So it's not doing it. That's not cutting it. It doesn't matter if you put more aluminum in there or not. Actually, tell you the truth, aluminum, this aluminum like this causes heat is created, and it actually reflects. So you can actually have heat that reflects, and what it does is it runs by instead of conduction would be that the heat actually heats up a different item, and then that item actually passes the heat off somewhere else. But convection means that it heats like this, and then it just rotates in a cycle, and it heats the air to where it goes. Aluminum foil helps to pretty much cook your chipset like a turkey, and that's exactly what it's done in this one. So remember that when you're getting your computer worked on. So what we've done now is replaced the silicone-based TIM. Silicone-based with a latex backing, it appears. We've replaced that with the actual manufacturer's TIM, and hopefully this will work. Now, with most all the systems that I work on, I put this on there, and it doesn't cause any problems. In the early stages, I can admit that I've used this in the past, mainly because I've seen that they had used them on the Xboxes for the VRAM, but it doesn't work. It does not work. It doesn't transfer the heat. It doesn't do what it needs to do. I think they only use this as a contact cushion. By contact cushion, I mean that they put this the same way that he was using the electrical tape over there to keep the chipset capacitors from touching the metal. But I think that's the only reason they use that, because this right here seems to be the only thing that works. That and some Arctic silver. But besides that, we just leave it. Manufacturers, this is what I've been using for the longest time now, and it works perfectly fine. And that's what I'm going to put back on this computer before I start the repair. So now that we have completed our reflow of this system, we are going to turn it on and perform our burn-in. So I'm going to turn it on and wait for it to start up. And what we have is a message displayed on the screen telling us that the wireless device is absent, but we want to go into the BIOS, and so now we have a BIOS screen. And we'll perform our burn-in from here. Pretty common with these. What happens is, especially with the G70 series and such, you're going to have an issue where starting it up and going into diagnostics testing, you're going to find that it will not sync with the external monitor. So what we're going to do is let this one burn in for 2 hours. So we're going to start it at 1347, and then we're just going to let it do its thing and go from there. And then we'll come back and check it and see what happens. So I explained before with the burn-in, and we'll do it again here, is that the burn-in is actually trying to cure the thermal compound and push the air pockets out. And if there are air pockets in it, what they cause are called voids, and it makes your thermal compound like Swiss cheese. So by doing that, it causes it to air heats slower than the thermal transfer material or the compound, and what happens is it causes the chipset to overheat, and that rapid change in heat causes it to fail. So what we're doing here is actually heating it up and making sure that the voids are not there and that the thermal compound is perfectly fine. Now with this system with precision division, what we saw was that the processor was not cleaned of the old material. So by not being cleaned of the old material, what happens is it actually insulates and counteracts what you're doing with new material. So this did not actually help it any. It didn't help it one bit. It actually helped to destroy the machine. So you spend all the time of reflowing the system, working on the system, putting the elaborate aluminum heat sinks on there and all that, only to find that that doesn't even, you're not even changing the thermal interface material or the compound, and what happens is it just counteracts everything that you've done, which is, for lack of a better term, epic failure on our part. So what we've done is we've actually cleaned this and cleaned this here, and we put non-conductive compound here, and we put Arctic silver here. So by doing that, hopefully we can cure this in and make sure that the system is working properly. Now what we have here is the thermostat hooked up to it, and it's reading 82 right now. As the heat is transferred from here and the curing process takes effect, this number should go up. So it should go 82, 83, 84, 85, and it should actually go up and that's what we're waiting to see. But it takes between 2 and 3 hours for it to properly cure, and that's how we test to make sure that the process is actually done properly. We'll see this number increase, and that's how we do it. So we'll leave it here, we'll let it be for a little bit, and then we'll come back and finalize the setup and everything like that. So now we've waited our 2 hours, and now we're at 15:51 for our time on this. So we're going to say that our burn-in was performed correctly. Something that was probably not performed by Precision Division, I can almost guarantee you that, in my opinion, the use of those aluminum heat sinks did more to insulate and damage the machine. The lack of the burn-in, the lack of using proper thermal compound did nothing but damage this system, and subsequently caused it to have to be a reflow reperformed, if it was even reflowed to begin with. What we have seen in the past is you could take a system and drop the core temperature on it maybe 1 or 2 degrees, and with that drop in temperature you can actually get it to boot, take a picture, and then by taking the picture you've said, oh, I have a documented working machine, and it may work for a minute or two, and then that's going to pass as documentation, when in essence the machine has just been jury-rigged long enough to get a picture and then suffice for a customer that gets it after the fact. But what we've actually done is taken and burned it in and done what we were supposed to do to actually perform a repair on it. So what we're going to do is put it together, build it back, and then test it and make sure everything's good, and then after that we're going to call it repaired, because there's nothing more for us to do. So now we have our system put back together, and now it's up and running. We have a BIOS screen here, and everything's going well with it. Of course, we had to put a stick of memory in there just to get it to boot. But as a side note for everybody, keep in mind this also. When we received this system, it had a screw here, a screw here, a screw here, and a screw here. All the other screws that we've replaced, including these screws right here that keep the top panel on, were completely missing. Not a single screw was in there except for the 4 and probably 2 or 3 others that were on the inside of the motherboard to actually keep say the power jack and USBs and stuff like that on. So that's how this user received it back from Precision Division, and that's how we received it from them. Actually, if you have to ask me, that's, well, less than acceptable, especially when you read the contract, and the contract states that screw threads break off and missing screws are not part of any reason to have a chargeback. Well, I can tell you this much: I am not a plastic molder. I do not mold plastic, and I do not replace plastic pieces. But I can tell you, such as in that hole, I have put a screw in, and there was a thread for the screw to take. That screw was missing. That screw was missing. And there was nothing that kept these screws from being put in except for someone's sheer will to either A, act in a fashion that was unprofessional, or B, they were just so lazy they didn't feel like putting it in, or 3, they had a contract that said, I'm not responsible for screws, therefore by you signing it, I'm not going to put screws in, which is total disrespect to the client. But what we have here are the screws replaced and the system up and running, and it continues to work at this very moment. So what we'll say is this machine's done. We'll write up the report and everything will be ready to go.